He paid for first class. He dressed the part. He minded his business. But 30,000 feet above ground, a flight attendant pointed at him and accused him of theft, with eyes full of doubt and a cabin full of silence. What happened next turned the entire flight upside down. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss how this story unfolds. The airport pulsed with 1,000 lives, each moving in a different direction, each with its own destination. But for Kelechi, today wasn't just about miles or meetings. It was about presence, visibility, being seen without being judged, existing without having to explain. He adjusted the strap of his carry-on, his passport clutched tight in his palm. The name printed on it was bold, ***, Kelechi Imidi ***, born in Lagos, now thriving in Atlanta. The founder of a rising tech company. A man who had worked twice as hard to get half as much respect. A man used to proving himself before even speaking. The electronic voice announced boarding for first and business class. Kelechi stepped forward, and the woman scanning boarding passes gave him a brief glance, then a second one that lingered longer than necessary. "Business class?" she asked, lips barely moving. Kelechi offered a tight nod, his boarding pass extended politely. "Yes." The scanner beeped. The green light flashed. She smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes, then waved him through. Kelechi walked past without reacting. He'd become an expert at that, at silencing the urge to respond, to defend, to question. You learned quickly in the Western world. Sometimes dignity meant biting your tongue even when your soul screamed. He found his seat, **5A***, right by the window, and placed his bag overhead. Settling into the leather seat, he exhaled. His first international conference as CEO. A big deal. Investors would be there, journalists too. But all he could feel in that moment was the invisible armor he wore, the one made of patience, awareness, and centuries of unwritten rules. A white man in a tailored suit approached the adjacent seat. He paused, glanced at Kelechi, and for a fraction of a second, hesitated. Kelechi caught it. He always caught it. But the man sat down, opened a newspaper, and said nothing. Minutes passed. The plane filled. Polished shoes clicked down the aisle. Babies cried. A flight attendant offered champagne to business class passengers. When she reached Kelechi's row, she poured the drink for his neighbor, smiled broadly, and turned to him. "And you are?" "Kelechi." "5, he replied. Her eyes scanned his seat number, then flicked back to his face. "Do you have your boarding pass, sir?" His heart didn't race. It didn't even twitch. This wasn't new. He handed it to her silently. She read it, her smile faltering as if surprised it was valid. "Enjoy your flight," she muttered, setting the drink down stiffly and moving on. Kelechi sipped slowly, letting the cold bubbles distract him. The plane began taxiing. Outside, the airport faded behind glass and heat waves. Inside, he stared at the seatbelt light glowing above, the hum of engines growing louder. He leaned back and closed his eyes. The plane soared through the clouds, smooth and steady. Kelechi scrolled through notes on his tablet, prepping for his pitch. The presentation was sleek. His algorithms had already caught industry attention. Still, his fingers trembled a little. Not from fear of failure, but from the knowledge that even success wouldn't shield him from scrutiny. He decided to take a walk, stretch his legs. He headed toward the restroom, which was just past the first-class divider. As he walked, he smiled politely at a flight attendant, who barely returned it. On his way back, a young girl giggled in the aisle, playing with a bracelet. Her mother scolded her lightly. Kelechi offered a smile as he passed. Back in his seat, he resumed reading. Then came the announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice crackled over the intercom. "If anyone has found or seen a missing gold bracelet with emerald studs, please alert a member of the cabin crew. It belongs to one of our first-class passengers and has sentimental value." Whispers buzzed through the cabin. Kelechi didn't look up. But someone else did. 15 minutes later, the same flight attendant returned. Claire ***. Her name tag read. Her posture was stiffer now. Her smile was gone. "Sir," she said to Kelechi, tone clipped, "we need to speak with you for a moment." He blinked, startled. "Me?" "Yes. You were near first class a short while ago, were you not?" "I went to the restroom. We've reviewed the passenger log. A valuable bracelet is missing. Witnesses saw you in the vicinity." Something twisted in Kelechi's stomach, but his voice remained calm. "You think I took it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she gestured toward his bag. "I need to look through your belongings." All eyes turned toward him now. Phones lifted quietly. The man beside him shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. A woman a few rows back murmured something to her husband, who shook his head slowly. Kelechi didn't move. "You're serious?" Claire's eyes didn't blink. "It's protocol." He reached up, pulled down his bag, and unzipped it. One by one, she rifled through his things. His laptop, a change of clothes, a packet of cashew nuts, a small Bible. No bracelet. Still, she stood there, uncertain, skeptical. As if the absence of evidence only proved how clever he must be. Kelechi looked her in the eye. "Are you going to check everyone else's bags too, or is this exclusive treatment?" Silence. Claire glanced around, clearly uneasy, but not ready to admit defeat. "You were the only one near the area." "No," came a voice from behind them, low but firm. "He wasn't." Heads turned. A tall woman in a tailored navy dress stood near the front of business class, arms folded. Her presence was commanding, regal even. Skin the color of polished mahogany, hair pulled back into a bun that looked sculpted with intention. "I saw others walk through that area too," she continued, voice unwavering. "You're singling him out. Why?" Claire's lips parted, but no sound came out. The woman didn't wait for an answer. "You should be very sure of what you're doing. Because the world is watching." Kelechi looked around again, and for the first time, some of the faces held shame, not suspicion. The moment hung in the air like a held breath. Wordlessly, Claire stepped back and moved away. Kelechi sank into his seat, his hands steady, but his heart no longer still. Something had shifted. And this flight was far from over. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft glow as the flight drifted deeper into the sky. Tray tables lowered, dinner trays cleared, and the hum of conversation gave way to a quiet lull. But for Kelechi, there was no calm. His heart had settled from earlier, but not completely. He stared at the back of the seat in front of him, his mind looping one question, ***, why me? ***. He tried to return to his notes, but they now felt distant, irrelevant. He had been judged without a trial. His skin had spoken before his mouth ever did. The woman who had stood up for him earlier, the poised black woman with the commanding voice, had returned to her seat. She hadn't said more, but her presence had settled something. A flicker of dignity restored. Still, the discomfort lingered like a shadow on his shoulders. He closed his eyes, hoping to let it all go. But peace, as always, was fleeting. Another attendant, this time a young man with clipped blonde hair and a tense smile, appeared beside him. "I'm sorry to disturb you again, but could you come with me for a moment?" Kelechi looked up. "Why?" The man lowered his voice. "Just to clear some things up." Kelechi's jaw flexed. He saw it now. This wasn't over. He stood, gathering himself, not just physically but emotionally. Each step down the narrow aisle felt heavier. A few passengers watched. A few pulled out phones again, pretending not to record. Their curiosity wasn't concern. It was the kind that fed off spectacle, not truth. They reached a small section near the galley, just behind the curtains separating first class. Claire was there, arms folded. The bracelet's owner, a white woman with sharp features and diamonds on every visible finger, stood beside her, eyes hard. "That's him," the woman snapped. "I'm sure of it. He walked past me just before I noticed it was gone." Kelechi said nothing. Claire stepped forward. "Sir, please be honest with us. If you return the item now, we can avoid involving authorities upon landing." He looked her dead in the eye. "I don't have it. I didn't take it. And if you're basing this on someone's feeling, you've already lost your grip on truth." The woman scoffed. "You people always play the victim." Kelechi flinched, not at the words, but at the venom behind them. "You people?" he repeated, his voice steady but cutting. "What exactly do you mean?" Claire tried to speak, but Kelechi raised a hand. "Don't answer for her. Let her own it." The woman turned red but didn't back down. "You were out of place. People like you don't usually walk through first class unless they're lost." And there it was. Not the missing bracelet. Not the accusation. But the real crime, ***, existing in a space someone else decided you didn't belong in ***. Claire turned to the young male attendant. "Search him again." "No," Kelechi said sharply. Claire froze. "You've searched my bag. You've dragged me down here. You've humiliated me without a single piece of evidence. I won't be touched again like I'm guilty until proven innocent." "You're making this difficult," Claire hissed. "No," came a voice, calm, cool, and deliberate. ***, you are." Everyone turned. The same elegant black woman who had spoken up earlier now stepped through the curtain into the galley. But this time, there was no ambiguity in her posture or tone. She walked like someone with power. Someone used to having a room listen when she entered it. "Who are you?" Claire asked, trying to sound firm, but faltering. The woman reached into her small designer purse and pulled out an airline-issued badge. Embossed. "Ava Robinson," she said, "CEO of this airline." The silence cracked like thunder. The passengers who had been peeking leaned back suddenly. The attendants froze. Even the bracelet woman shifted uncomfortably, suddenly unsure of her stance. "I travel anonymously for quality audits," Ava continued, "but I never expected I'd need to step in midair to stop discrimination from being disguised as security." Claire tried to speak, but Ava lifted a hand. "You accused a man based on assumptions, not facts. You made no effort to verify the claim before dragging him into the galley like a criminal." "But the passenger said," Claire began. "And that's all it took?" Ava interrupted. "A hunch? A vague memory? Surveillance footage exists on this plane. Camera logs. You didn't even check." Kelechi felt something in his chest, an ache not of pain, but of long-withheld relief. Someone saw what he saw. Someone with power. Ava turned to the male attendant. "Bring me the footage. Now." The young man disappeared down the corridor. A few minutes passed in tense silence. Kelechi leaned against the wall, breathing deeply. When the attendant returned, he carried a tablet. Ava reviewed it silently. Then she turned the screen to Claire and the woman with the missing bracelet. "There?" she said. "That's your grandson." The woman gasped. The footage showed the same young girl Kelechi had passed earlier playing in the aisle, and beside her, a boy of about 13 sneaking up, grabbing the bracelet in jest, and tossing it into a seat-back pocket during a laugh. Moments later, chaos unfolded. The bracelet was quickly retrieved from the seat. Claire looked like she wanted to disappear. The woman stammered. I didn't know." "You assumed," Ava said coolly. "You didn't ask. You didn't check. You accused." She turned to Claire. "You will be suspended immediately. HR will follow up." Claire nodded numbly, defeated. Ava faced Kelechi next, her expression shifting to one of deep, personal apology. "Mr. Amidi, on behalf of this airline, I am truly sorry." Kelechi nodded once, unable to speak. Ava added gently, "You should never have been put in this position. Not by us. Not by anyone." Back in his seat, Kelechi stared out the window. Clouds drifted below like waves. The sky had never looked so quiet, so indifferent. The man beside him cleared his throat awkwardly. I saw everything. That was wrong. All of it. Kelechi didn't reply. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even surprised. Just tired. A few rows back, a woman murmured to her husband, "I didn't realize how easy it is to get it so wrong." Kelechi closed his eyes. He didn't need their sympathy. What he wanted was different, respect without condition. And somewhere in the silence, he knew this story wasn't over. The air in the cabin had shifted. It was no longer heavy with suspicion, but it wasn't light either. Something hung between the passengers now, guilt, shame, and the silent unraveling of assumptions. Kelechi sat quietly, his seatbelt fastened, his face turned toward the oval window. The clouds below rolled like soft waves. But there was nothing peaceful about the moment. He wasn't just tired, he was drained. Not physically. Emotionally. Mentally. There was something about constantly needing to prove your innocence, your worth, your belonging, that stole pieces of you every time it happened. Ava Robinson, the woman who had revealed herself as the CO, remained standing in the aisle just a few rows ahead, speaking quietly with a group of flight attendants. Her presence had shifted the power in the cabin like a tectonic plate sliding beneath the surface. Every now and then, a passenger glanced her way. Others stared at Kelechi and quickly looked away when he noticed. He didn't want their pity. That wasn't the point. The point was, he never should have been accused in the first place. A flight attendant returned with the bracelet now cleanly polished, cradled in a velvet napkin like it was sacred. The woman who had blamed Kelechi received it back with trembling hands. But there was no joy on her face, no pride in finding it. Only discomfort. She didn't even look toward Kelechi. Not a word. Not even a whisper of an apology. And still, Kelechi sat there. Still, quiet. But not broken. The boy who had taken the bracelet, a lanky teen with nervous eyes, stepped forward under the weight of his grandmother's stare. "I didn't mean to steal it," he muttered to no one in particular. "It was just a joke. I thought I put it back." No one responded. Ava finally turned from the front of the plane and walked toward Kelechi. Her steps were calm, confident, the way someone moves when they know exactly who they are. She stopped by his seat. "Do you mind if I sit?" Kelechi gestured to the empty seat beside him. She lowered herself gracefully, hands clasped. Her eyes, though stern, held something softer now, recognition. "Mr. Meaty," she began, "I want to thank you for your patience. For how you handled what happened." Kelechi let out a low, tired chuckle. "Handled? I didn't have many options." She tilted her head slightly, acknowledging the truth in that. "I watched it all," she said. "From the hesitation at the gate, to the champagne, to the accusation." "You knew?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "I've seen it more times than I can count," she said. "But it never gets easier to watch. Especially when it happens to someone like you." "Someone like me?" "Someone who shouldn't have to shrink himself just to fly in peace." They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the cabin settled into a strange hush. Even those pretending not to listen were leaning in. The woman across the aisle wiped a tear from her cheek. A man in row 6 held his head low, his face unreadable. Ava continued, "I've worked in this industry for over 2 decades. I've been the only black woman in the room more times than I care to remember. I know what it means to be judged by how you look before you speak. And I know how much it costs us to rise anyway." Kelechi nodded slowly. Something in her voice felt like truth dipped in fire. She turned to the rest of the cabin. Her voice rose slightly, not loud but clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" The passengers looked up, startled by the sudden shift. "I am Ava Robinson, CO of this airline. And what happened today is not just unfortunate, it's unacceptable. We speak a lot about dignity and inclusion in our brochures. But today, dignity was denied to one of our passengers." Kelechi tensed. His name hadn't been mentioned, but every gaze found him anyway. A man was accused with no proof, judged because of his appearance, searched without cause. And not one person stood up until it was almost too late. Her words struck like a slow hammer. No one moved. No one spoke. This is the reality too many of us face. You think it's rare. It's not. You think it's subtle. It isn't. It's loud to those of us who live with it. And silence from others only makes it louder. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle into every row, every head bowed in regret. I challenge every one of you to reflect. Not just on what happened here, but on what you let happen in everyday life. In your offices, your neighborhoods, your silence. A few rows ahead, the woman who had accused Kelechi shifted uncomfortably, pressing a napkin to her lips. Ava stood. I will be issuing a formal apology to Mr. Umidi. The staff involved will face consequences. But more importantly, we will be reviewing our training and bias protocols across the entire airline. Because this must not happen again. She turned to Kelechi. You shouldn't have had to carry that burden today. But you did, with more grace than most would. Kelechi swallowed. I've carried it for a long time. Today just made it heavier. I know, she said softly. But maybe today, it got a little lighter for someone else because they saw you refuse to bow. With that, she gave a nod and returned to her seat. The silence that followed was different. Not the awkward hush of suspicion, but the reverent quiet of reflection. The plane had not changed altitude, but everyone on board had descended into a deeper understanding, one they couldn't fly away from. Kelechi looked out the window once more. This time, he didn't see clouds. He saw clarity. The wheels touched down with a soft, steady thud. The cabin jolted forward slightly, and the passengers who had once been full of whispers and side glances now sat unusually quiet, eyes forward, back straight, as if something sacred had passed through them in the last few hours. Kelechi remained still in his seat, hands resting on his lap, gaze locked on the window as the runway sped past. The skyline of London rose in the distance, gray and glowing under the morning light. But his mind wasn't there. It was still thousands of feet above, trapped in the gaze of a crowd that had made him feel like a criminal without evidence. The seatbelt sign pinged off. The cabin rustled to life. The same man who had hesitated before sitting next to Kelechi now cleared his throat awkwardly. He leaned slightly, not too close. Hey, he said. I just wanted to say you handled that with more patience than most people I know would have had. Kelechi gave a small nod. Thank you. The man lowered his voice. I didn't know what to do when it was all happening. That's part of the problem, Kelechi replied, not unkindly. The man nodded, absorbing the quiet rebuke. As passengers began to disembark, many offered Kelechi something, apologies in whispers, nods that were more sincere than before, and one or two gentle pats on the shoulder, as if trying to erase the damage with touch. He didn't need their guilt. What he needed was a world where this didn't keep happening. Still, something about their response, late as it was, offered a faint glimmer that maybe, just maybe, some of them had learned something they wouldn't forget. Ava Robinson stood near the exit, speaking briefly with the head of the flight crew. As Kelechi approached, she turned to him. Transportation is waiting for you just outside the terminal, she said. And a formal apology letter has already been sent to your email. Kelechi looked her in the eye. You didn't have to do all that. No, she replied. I did. And I'll keep doing more. For people like us who have to carry too much, just to sit where we earn the right to be. He nodded, offering a faint smile. Before he stepped off the plane, a young black boy, maybe 10 years old, tugged at his sleeve. Kelechi turned. The boy looked up with wide eyes. You were brave. His mother stood behind him, smiling gently. He's been watching you since the whole thing started. He said, that man didn't shout or cry. He just stood strong. He needed to see that. Kelechi crouched to the boy's level, his voice soft. It's not always easy. But never let anyone make you feel small. No matter what they say or how they look at you, you deserve to be where you are." The boy nodded, eyes shining. Kelechi gave him a soft pat on the shoulder and walked into the airport. Hours later, Kelechi stood at a podium inside the Grand Hall of the Global Tech Summit. Rows of delegates, entrepreneurs, and investors stared up at him, expecting numbers and graphs. But he paused before pulling up his slide deck. "I'll get to the innovations," he said. "But first, let me tell you about something else." He spoke, not about software or analytics, but about that flight. About how brilliance isn't always recognized in a black man until someone with power says it's okay. About how silence often speaks louder than insults. About how exhausting it is to live in a world where your skin walks into the room before your credentials do. He didn't name names. He didn't speak with anger. He spoke with truth. And when he finished, the room rose, not in applause alone, but in respect. Later, a woman from the audience approached him backstage. Her skin was pale, her accent clipped. "I didn't understand before," she said. "But your story, it opened my eyes. Thank you for that." Kelechi simply nodded. He wasn't looking for praise. He was simply tired of silence. That evening, back in his hotel room, he stood by the window, watching the London skyline glow against the dusk. His phone buzzed with messages. Friends who had seen the viral video. News outlets asking for interviews. People thanking him for how he handled it. He didn't respond to most. Instead, he took off his jacket, unbuttoned his collar, and breathed. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to feel not just anger or exhaustion, but pride. Not for enduring what he should never have had to, but for holding on to his dignity in a world designed to strip it away. Because sometimes the loudest victory is walking through fire and refusing to come out smelling like smoke. And in that quiet moment, he smiled, not because everything was better, but because he was still standing. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful journeys that inspire, challenge, and uplift. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment of hope and strength. Join our community. Your support means everything.